There are no straight lines in nature. That's one of the dictums of Professor Freddie Gruber, and I kind of think it's true. I thought about it a bit, as I usually tend to do with things like that, and I realized that anything in nature that does seem to be straight, like a beam of light, for instance, actually travels in waves. So it can be seen that everything is orbital and cyclical and circular, and so it should be in music, I think, especially in drumming, that you're not dealing with a series of points in a line, but rather a point in a circle. And one of the things that Freddie stresses in his playing is the motion between the beats. And he uses illustrations of dancers or piano players and drumming too, where most of it does take place in the air, so it makes sense for you to think about what happens in the air between the notes, between the beats, as part of the orbital motion. So a lot of the exercises that Freddie gets me started working with were this sort of thing, to get my playing circular and to get a more efficient movement, so that when you're not having to work, when you're not having to exert force, you're not. And one of the things he stresses is, if the stick wants to fall, let it fall. And thumb control is a series of exercises also that he had me working on, have to do with just thumb control and always having effortless but complete control over that stick. So as it falls, I've trained my thumb now to be able to monitor the movement of that stick and let it fall, but still control its falling. And part of that motion too, and another thing is with Freddie's idea is, the stick wants to bounce, let it bounce. And part of certainly my old way of playing had to do almost with playing right through the drum in the way that you're taught, for instance, with a golf swing, that you play through the ball. In a drum, you don't necessarily want to play right through the drum, I don't think, and aim for the floor. I try to make now the end of my stroke becomes the surface of the drum. And if the stick wants to bounce, I've tried to learn to let it bounce and use that bounce, so that if I'm playing fills or rolls or time or whatever, the bounce becomes a part of my motion. So I'm monitoring that bounce and controlling it, but just letting it happen. Get out of the way is the way Freddie puts it. If the thing wants to happen, then don't prevent it from happening. Just use those physics of the drumstick falling or the drumstick bouncing. Use them to your advantage as part of the music, as part of the orbital motion of rhythmic play, and controlling what happens in the air between your beats. And it's a series of small exercises that would vary from drummer to drummer, so I can't really lay them out as a program, but they're exercises for the feet and hands, and indeed for the whole body, that contribute to feeling everything as a cycle of motion. One of the analogies that I like to use with Freddie, is what he's been to me, is more like what a pro tennis player has a coach for. They don't need a coach to teach them how to play the game. And as with drumming too, I've been playing for 30 years, and in this band for more than 20, so I really know what I want to accomplish, and a lot of the ways in which to go about it. But Freddie comes in and more or less watches my serve or watches my cross-court backhand, and will suggest ways to make those more efficient, more comfortable, and in the case of drumming, it also ends up making it more musical, because if something is more effortless to play and more natural to play, naturally it changes the shape of the music. And this is a subtle change that at first blush might not even be recognizable. When I first started playing the new drum parts for this album to Geddy and Alex in the band, they didn't really notice a lot of difference. They thought maybe I had new hardware or something. So that's an indication of how subtle it is. Or when Peter Collins came in, our co-producer, and he heard the demos for the first time, and I told him the process I'd been through of studying with Freddie and practicing every day for the year prior to that point. And he said, well, it still sounds like you. And at first I was kind of taken aback by that, but then I had to realize, well, it's a compliment. If I can completely restructure everything I do about the way I play, and the drums that I play it on, and the way I set them up, and the way I approach them, and the way I hold the sticks, and the end of the stick that I hold, the drum heads I used, everything nearly is different. If all of that can happen and it still sounds like me, then I think that's a vote of confidence that my approach to playing, my sense of how things should be orchestrated and placed, and my physical approach to drumming too, as being energetic and kind of forceful, all of that is going to come out also. So that's an element of the subtlety, and the other two guys in the band are a good example in that respect too. Because as I said early on, they thought they didn't hear much difference, but when it came time to play to my recorded drum parts and to overdub their parts to it, suddenly they did discover that they had to change their time sense. They had to alter their own clock to sit in with me, because there's a subtle little change of me playing the pulse now, instead of playing to the click track or playing to metrical points in a line time. Now that I'm playing to dots on a circle type of time, it changes in a subtle but very fundamental way the whole clock under which our music is built. And here we have another fine example of orbital motion.
Here we go, vertigo, video vertigo, test for echo. Here we go, in slow-mo, video vertigo, test for echo.